The transfer window throws up all sorts of things here and there, and some occurrences and ongoings and happenings. I'm running out of superlatives here, but I think you get the gist. It can be a testing time for journalists, for content creators, for fans, and anyone involved in the dramas and emotions that transfers can bring, both positive and negative. And to discuss that and some more in today's pre-recorded Canadian special, I'm joined by a very special guest in today's Arsenal transfer show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is our Arsenal transfer show, or transfer show, I should say, because it's not the usual. As you listeners know by now, I'm not here. This is an illusion. This is what do they call it on in the Matrix? It's a simulation. It's not real, but my guest is real. I'm very much joined today by Alex from the Different Knock. How you doing, mate? You good? You well?
Good, sir. I'm very good. I'm jealous of you as well. Not right now because you're not there, but I will be jealous of you next week. It's very cool. You're going to Canada. Very exciting.
Yeah, it's a much needed break. I can probably tell the people in the chat box are going, thank goodness he's finally left.
He's done
and taken a break because he needs it. Because it's been, as we were talking a little bit off air before we started recording this, it's been probably about 3 years since I've had a proper break and just taken myself away. And obviously everything's going to happen while I'm away. I've resigned myself to that. I know that's going to happen. I'm prepared and armed with an iPhone and a laptop if I need to drastically chuck something out. So listeners, be assured that you'll get some reaction from me while I'm away. If something big does happen, I'll sneak away from the missus for half an hour to record something. But with a couple of these episodes that I'm doing, of course, with some fantastic guests like Alex, of course, make sure you're checking out the Different Knock and subscribe to the channel and following on socials and all of that, because some fantastic breakdowns and analysis goes on over there all the time. Very hard working is our Alex. But while, of course, that's going on, I want to kind of do some different pieces of content, some more discussion-based stuff, because anything we talk about, and we're recording this, I'll give you a glimpse behind the curtain on Wednesday, the 4th of June. So this could be going out a week later. Anything we discuss, I mean, Lionel Messi may have been cloned and brought into Arsenal as a 20-year-old by this point. We don't know. So anything we discuss that wise is going to be very much out of date. And so today's show is kind of around the discussion of reporting, covering, breaking down, analyzing transfers, the experience of talking about it and dealing with the online space that is the Arsenal jungle, in a sense. So, Alex, I guess, obviously, because... And correct me if I'm wrong, but I would describe you as one of the more recent entrances into kind of the Arsenal YouTubing sphere. The rise has been massive, and that's a credit to the content you've built and the editing and the analysis and the quality that it goes with it. But being kind of the one of the younger group, if you will, of content creators in this space, how have you found that entrance and reception and just learning more about what it's like to create content, especially around transfers in particular?
Well, firstly, thank you for the kind words. It's tough, isn't it? Because I always want to sort of put that thing out there. I firstly, I think it's an incredibly privileged position to be in. Like I really do. And I know so many people who would love to do, but probably what both we do, right? Like, and it's an amazing privilege. But it's we're on a very different level. But with every job, no matter what the job is, there is going to be some pullback as well. To be honest, like overall as a journey, I've absolutely loved it. It's been I've met amazing people. Like I'm very privileged. Like today, I'm in a studio. My editor is right there. He's nodding at me. So we're it's brought me so many opportunities. Like as an overall sort of journey, I guess it's been amazing. And I'm always, there are difficulties which I think we'll get into and we should get into. But as a sort of starting place, I think it is like to talk about the club also at the time we're talking about the club as well, because I could have been born at a different time. I started in sort of the content space about 22, 23, and that was really, I suppose, when this Arteta project properly took off. So sure. I picked a really good time, and I think that's a massive part of it as well. So yeah, I do feel very lucky. But yeah, it's not without its difficulties, as I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah, I remember doing shows on like Wenger's last days the appointment of Emery, and losing in the Europa League final against Chelsea, and FA Cup victories that we've had before Emery came along with Wenger and stuff. So yeah, it's 8 years of being in this space is a long time in football, and a lot changes. Even though Arteta's kind of taken up the bulk of that with his tenure, it's been a very strange kind of dynamic where trophies were being talked about when I first kind of came onto this more than 8 years ago, when I was just guesting on other podcasts back in 2015, 16 or whatever it was. And I think the mood then, or the kind of the dynamic of fans, was very much at the start the Arsene Wenger in and out situation.
Yeah.
And it feels as though
AKB WOB or something.
Yeah, that was it. You had to be on one or the other, and that's what I was going to kind of ask you. There's this kind of psychological necessity that Arsenal fans love to be on one side of the fence or the other, to a level that I can only describe as almost patriotism, to the level in which they attach themselves to either side. And it's not just about managers; it's about Sesko or Gyökeres. It's about Edu in or Edu out. It's about the ownership. It's about specific transfer targets like those that I've mentioned. There's such passion and emotion and energy within the Arsenal fan base about so much that it's almost like a duty that I feel fans have, that they must attach themselves to one side of the coin or the other, and that having kind of an open mind is almost scoffed at, and that you need to get off the fence because you're going to get splinters.
Yeah, and I think it's really hard to kind of, you mentioned the passion, to like remember that the passion is for the club. It's not angry at you or the other person when you're in those kind of debates. It's like, it's the passion, because we all want to win. And I think that's the thing I always want to try and return to, at least. And it's not easy. Try and return to in those sorts of conversations or in the spaces or whatever. So just to be like, we all want the same thing. We all want Arsenal to win. You may think we win by doing that, or you might think we do win by doing this. Okay, we all are trying to get to the same goal, and I think that I try and remember that. But it's hard. I think so much of this is dictated, Tom, by the platforms that we're on, and I think this is so important to stress, because I think these ultimately, pick your social media, whether it's you like podcasts, or you like YouTube or Twitter, or whatever it is for you, how you engage as a fan online, but also probably it's a different space offline, but certainly online. The entire thing, as people know, I'm not teaching anyone anything new, is to keep you engaged on there. So like and it's really hard to have. And this is why I think spaces like yours, but and I hope spaces like mine, but also Arsenal Vision or whoever, that's why they get the traction they do. Because I think when you can curate a space where things don't feel like that, people flock to it because that feels more human. And I think the algorithms or whatever, because they are so intent on keeping you on there, that's all they're built for. So everything will be reactive and overblown, and the things you see will feel like the most extreme stuff. And I don't know, I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes. I'm like, I don't have a particularly strong opinion. I feel like I should, or like just being like, I don't know. Like, is that can I say that? Is that
it's
allowed?
like the most? I think those three words are probably the least used common phrase in the English language. It feels like using the phrase I don't. I had someone leave a comment on the video, I'll be last week when this goes out, that was called the comment was, Tom, I've heard nothing on this, Canton. It was like, because people will ask me like, what's going on with this? And I'm like, what do you think about this report? And I'll be like, well, I've heard nothing personally on that. And I'm not going to lie to you and say that, that's right, that's spot on. But sometimes I'll turn around and be like, look, this is coming from a really solid source. Or sometimes I'll have some insight from what I know from the limited contacts I have on it. But it's just this necessity, as you're right, that you must know, or you must have that opinion. You can never say, I don't know.
Yeah. Or I haven't watched him when a transfer link comes up.
I say that a lot more these days, to be fair.
Yeah. But it's tricky though, because I think then you can go two ways. You can basically go, oh, everyone's an idiot and I hate that person and this, and it's very hard because that's tempting. But I think I always try and look at like, okay, the whole websites, the whole thing, the real power here is the algorithms, whatever. That's what, that's what pushes people into those camps, or certainly feeling like it is. The problem comes though, is that you and I, in what we do, we can't disengage from that. So, and I'm curious with you, like how you cope with it, because I also think you don't, in wanting to cover Arsenal in what we do, like it's amazing. I never thought ever in my point, and actually I came from an acting background, so it was more from that perspective. I never considered I would be sort of seen by a certain number of people, then also be cast in their mind as something that I have to sort of play up to, and all these sorts of, it's a very odd sort of parasocial dynamic that I'm curious on your take on with especially in your new role, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you'd have said to me 5 years ago, this is what because obviously that's when I quit teaching that I was in before, because I'd always done YouTube on the side. So it was like, if you'd have said to me 5 years ago, in 5 years, you're going to be covering Arsenal home and away, going to the Bernabeu, writing about Arsenal, I'd be like, hey, shut up, mate. Good one. And what you said there about kind of like being kind of, you almost get like a reputation that people expect something of you of a certain thread. And it's almost like if you slightly deviate from maybe what a thread you've had before or a feeling you've had before, because often, you know, those that are quite, I feel, open-minded about, say, the Mikel Arteta project, for instance, immediately get kind of pigeonholed into, oh, he can do no wrong for you. You can never be critical enough of him. And that's just not the case, is it? Like, it's just that at the moment, the sense is, certainly from my perspective, and I won't speak for anyone else, that, you know, Arsenal are on a track towards something great. And I don't feel like at the moment we're not on that track. I still feel like what we're doing is heading in that direction. And until we're not, or until we take a turn and don't look like that we're in that direction, I feel very comfortable with having, say, Mikel Arteta in charge. But that doesn't mean that we can't be critical of some of the things that he's done, or some of the things the club have done, or other executives done, or explain reasons behind why certain things haven't gone that way. And that obviously then gets pegged as the word excuses, which obviously pops up a lot, and I'm sure you've experienced plenty of as well.
Oh yes.
Because, and I feel it's almost like if someone can't quite grasp your explanation or your view or your opinion, the natural reaction is to go, you're just making excuses, because they can't quite see what you're seeing, which is human, right?
Yeah, I think it is. And I do get it, and you know, I'm in quite a good mood today, so I'm all right about it. But there's days where it does annoy me, because I'm like, it's just not what I said. Is it? Like, it's not even close to what I said. You've just made up something that I haven't said in my head. But again, it comes back to it. I mean, if I put it like this, okay, if I don't know, let's just say 1,000 people read one of your articles. Can you expect every single person to catch the drift of every single thing you're saying? It's like, honestly, I don't think that's a fair assumption.
Probably not. No.
And that's really hard to hold, because what you see and what you feel is the backlash or the pushback or whatever, or people misinterpreting you, which I think is a lot of stuff. I don't know. You must know George, who I work with.
Yeah,
so George.
Yeah, we've done shows together.
Yeah. Oh, great. So George is, and we talk about it, and he's like always on X replying to people, just like constantly about stuff. And I always say to him, mate, just stop replying, because you're going to be misinterpreted. If thousands of people, which is amazing and such a privilege, by the way, like, wow, that thousands of people care what you think about the club. Like, what? That's incredible.
Yeah.
You're going to be misinterpreted by certain people, and they're not going to understand you. They're going to project certain things onto you. And as you say, when relating this more back to Arsenal, you know, when there is maybe, especially at a critical time for the Mikel Arteta era project or whatever, it does feel a little bit like, I don't know if you felt it, post PSG, I had a bit of a like, oh
yeah.
I had a bit of a like, am I just, because I sort of went, have I done the sunk cost fallacy thing? I basically started, you know, just from, you know, my journey, I started in 22-23, everything was rosy, everything's literally doing this linear move.
Yeah.
Have I just been pulled in by that and actually not seen all the issues? And I really thought about it for a couple of days. I don't think I have. I am very critical of Mikel at times, and I have a lot of issues with him. But generally, I think he's a fantastic manager and a great custodian of the football club and our values. But you're going to be misinterpreted. It's going to happen. So, especially at this time when it's like this or that, as you say.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. I mean, I came out of that PSG press conference, I've talked about it before. Like, I felt at the end of the PSG game, I actually felt okay. Like, I felt like we've been beaten by the better team. Yes, we've missed chances, and there was big moments that we had in that game that I thought, had we have taken them at the beginning of their leg and gone 1-0 up early on, we might have gone through. We didn't take them, and finishing for me has been the biggest part, alongside chance creation, you know, this season, as to why Arsenal, within what's in their control, other than injuries, you know, and recruitment, has been such a big thing for us. But when I came out the press conference and Arteta was saying like, we're the best team and Donnarumma's the MVP of the two legs, I was like, no, I'll just be humble. Like, I know that phrase gets used, but like, just be humble here. Like, you've been beaten categorically by a better team here that's just been that's taken their chances. And yes, they've outperformed their XG, and yes, we've created a lot and not scored a lot, but that's on us. You know, that is on us. And Donnarumma is a great goalkeeper, but it's like I was trying to think of like an example. Like, it's like if anyone plays like a video game or like a card game or something like that, and it's a one-on-one situation, and you've done everything that you can, but your opponent just has all the cards, or your opponent has everything that they need, and they still have to play that right. They still have to play the game correctly. And just having a brilliant goalkeeper doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be perfect. David Raya is, for me, and has been probably the best keeper in the Premier League this season. It's a close one with Matt Sells, but it doesn't mean that just having the best keeper that they're never going to not make some mistakes. They are going to make some mistakes. Donnarumma didn't, because he's a great keeper. A lot of the fallout from that as well for fans was like, you know, well, look what PSG have spent. Look at the invest, especially when they come up against Inter and beat them so heavily. A lot of it was like, you look at the wage bill of the club, and it's like, I get that, but at the same time, Luis Enrique has put that group together and he's got the best from them. So many. Look at the Man United wage bill. Look at the Chelsea kind of wage bill and spending, and they're not reflecting that. But Luis Enrique is with them. But yeah, it just there was such a sense of, I think, why Mikel, have you not just taken ownership and accountability? I guess for that result.
On that specifically, I just wish he hadn't said it. Like, the thing is, I actually think it's quite indicative of how Mikel thinks about football, which is potentially one of my criticisms of him, is that, if you look at the field tilt and the expected assists and things like that, maybe you could make an argument that Arsenal were the better team, but it kind of doesn't matter. And at that point, you know, in a press conference after a game, I get he was trying to protect himself, but whatever. I wanted to ask you, do you think because you're in the press conferences and you have the physical flesh and blood in front of you, because I think a lot of people, like, they say things about the players and they say things about the managers or whatever, and I sort of think, you know, that's a person you're talking about. They like become like an avatar to certain people. It's almost like they're not real. And they are. They're a human being. So I wonder how that must impact how you view the game, because you're that close to Mikel. Like, you must maybe feel a bit more sympathy. I don't know.
I think that's one half of the coin, and the other half of the coin is that if you're an anonymous account on Twitter without a face or a name or whatever, that makes it obviously very easy to say anything, really, because social media has so little consequence. But from the point of view of people that want to be objective and want to be kind of like critical and praising in equal measure, or whatever's more worthy of praise or criticism based upon the situation, I think maybe at the beginning, when I was in the press conference for the first time, there was an element of like, no, you're place more so in the press room, less so than like what I was asking Mikel. Like, I felt it was more a case of like, I had to kind of earn my right to be there amongst other journalists I'd looked up to for a long time. And then eventually you kind of put that to one side and think, no, you just got to get on with your job, and you're there for a reason. You got to do it. But I feel like I haven't really changed. I don't think, I know the listeners may be writing in the live chat right now saying this is bollocks. Like, you've changed loads and stuff, but and maybe that happens. But no, I don't think so, because I was already, before doing that job, before being in that press room, I was already pretty grounded and objective in how I looked at Arsenal and looked at Arteta. And you know, I started that job, or started going into press conferences after Arteta was appointed. It's only been the last like 2 to 3 years, so pretty much just over half of his tenure. I don't really think too much has changed. It has obviously coincided with the more impressive kind of league performances where we are now challenging for titles and stuff. But
can you tell when he's in a good mood and a bad mood?
Yeah, you know, within minutes, like you can just sense it sometimes. Sometimes he'll come into kind of like the press room and he'll say hello, make a joke. It was the other day, like, or a few weeks back, where it was really hot, but the press room in like at London Colney, or the Show Realty, you know, there's a room before the press room that we all sit in and do our work and get blogs ready and stuff. And the aircon was really turned up, and it was cold. So we all went outside, like some of us went outside. It was me, Ed Aarons, and Isan Khan from the Mail and that, standing outside and having a chat. And then Mikel comes through and he's looking at us, goes, look at them soaking up the sun, like just like having a joke and that. And it's like that's more human. Like, but as soon as, like, similar for players, like, you know, players talk about the camaraderie between kind of each other and other players when they see, you know, compatriots from other clubs. As soon as you step over that line into the press conference room, it's like a switch goes for both him and everyone else, because you're there to ask the questions, you're there to challenge him, you're there to kind of ask the difficult ones. I remember when I put the question to him that was like, Man United have reached 5 finals in 5 years and won 2 trophies, and he completely like batted it away. He was like, because I was like, is that a measure of success in terms of kind of comparing to Arsenal? He was just like, I don't use success and failure in my vocabulary. And I was just like, it's fair enough. Like, I some questions he doesn't take to, other questions he just, you know, he's happy to wax lyrical about. But
interesting dance, that, isn't it? I think I'm also curious in your take on this, actually. So I have a big problem with Ange because he's Spurs manager.
I've been in his presses as well.
Okay, well, you're a perfect person to ask. I've had a big problem with Ange because I've felt that I really hate when people abuse their power. Like, for some reason, there's some deep trauma probably for me that it really gets me. It eats at my core. And when he speaks to journos the way he does, because I'm like, they can't fight back. They're either being asked to ask something or they know they have to ask something. Yeah, they can't say to you, actually, I think that's pretty rude, because they're going to get their press pass taken off them. So he can say what he wants. I think some of the ways he speaks to people, I think just on a human level, I forget Spurs and Arsenal, on a human level, I don't think it's okay. And I don't think it's down to cultural stuff either. People say, oh, he's Aussie. No, doesn't matter where you are in the world. I don't think you speak to someone like that.
Yeah, it's just rude.
So what I mean, so I'm curious on your take on that.
Yeah, I've been in the room where he's been kind of like, some people have kind of tried to be a bit jovial with Ange or whatever, and he's just like bit back and he's just not having it. I just think he's got very thin skin. Like, I don't think he's really made out necessarily in that sense. I think that there are, obviously, to get to where he is in his job, he has done and had to achieve some brilliant things. You know, Australian football in general, you know, it's not of a level in kind of Australian football and coaching and that. And this isn't a disrespect to that. It's just not had the infrastructure and investment and promotion to be able to rise to those ranks. And that's why so few kind of really do make it into kind of Europe in that way. So to be an Australian coach who's now won the Europa League with Tottenham, like, that is an achievement. I'd still personally think, if I was a Spurs fan, I'd still want him gone. You can't lose 22 games in the Premier League season and keep your job, in my opinion. Because if there was any teams better than the 3 that we had at the bottom of the league this season, they could have easily have gone down. And that's nuts for a team of Tottenham's size and the resources they have, the stadium they have, all of that. So I still would get rid, but I know it's difficult once he's ended a 17-year trophy drought. I think that what you said about kind of like that ability, that knowledge of the press room, knowing that a journalist gets 1 or 2, if you're lucky and you work for one of the bigger broadcasters, more questions in a press conference, then there isn't really that kind of back and forth. I think he tries to engage in back and forth sometimes. Arteta does it a little, but rarely. So yeah, I mean, there are times that I've sat on here and said, yeah, I think he's been rude. I think he's just been rude in certain press conferences. I think there are times where you are entitled to bite back and defend your case, especially if, say, someone's written or said something disrespectful about you. I think it's fair enough if you go back at them, but I think sometimes he maybe bites back a bit too brashly when it's not necessarily intended that way.
I think so. Maybe it's just my taste, and people will disagree with this. But he's sort of like, you're just looking for a headline. Well, yeah. So just don't give them one. Like, you don't.
That is the job.
That's the job. Like, it's a weird, like, I've worked out. You guys are looking for stories. Yeah, what a mate. Like,
yeah. I think at one of Mikel's press conferences, I won't name. I think I know who it was, but I don't want to get it wrong, so I won't name them. But I know it was the Sky reporter that asked Mikel. I think they were like, "I've been asked to ask you this."
Oh yeah, I think I heard this. Yeah.
Who's had a better season, Arsenal or Tottenham? And it's like, when listeners, fans, readers, they're not stupid. Like, they know that the question is there to get Arteta going, oh no, like, we've had a way better season. And he's smart enough to go, yeah, I'm not answering that.
And that's I guess this is the taste thing. That's my I would rather managers just go, I know what you're not even I know what you're trying to do, just I'm not going to answer that.
Well, the question that Issam asked Arteta about Gyökeres, when he was like, do you remember when we played Sporting and we won 5-1? what do you think of the performance of Victor Gyökeres in that game? And Arteta just started laughing because like he was like the direction of the question was good, but at the end of it, you know, because everyone knows the rules of an Arteta press conference. If you name a player, like Simon did it, Simon Collins in the Standard was really clever in how he asked about Rodrigo recently when he said, like, you've been linked to Rodrigo. I'm not asking you about the player specifically, but is it important that you're linked to players of that caliber? Right. I've asked him before when we were linked to Mudryk, and I said when Chelsea were kind of bidding for him, I asked without naming Mudryk, is it a frustration that perhaps valuations of players are going well above like what you would want to pay for players? And he gave a good answer to that. So it is a dance, as you said earlier. You have to learn the game and learn kind of the little kind of tips and tricks and ways in which you ask certain questions. Sometimes you just want to throw a question at him. Like I remember in Madrid, there was someone from, is it El Chinguito, that Spanish TV show?
Yeah, Chiringuito.
Chiringuito, yeah. One of their broadcasters came up to me and was like, can we do a quick interview with you before the press ahead of the game? And I was like, sure. And so he puts a microphone in my face, big camera in my face, and he's like, are Arsenal scared of the remontada? And I just went, no. I just left it a one-word answer. I was like, no, because I just kind of put my Arsenal fan hat on rather than the journalism hat on. I was like, no. And then he asked a few more questions. And I was chatting to some of the other journalists saying, should I just ask Mikel if you're scared? I was like, should I just go, are you scared of the remontada? Just to ask that. Because if he just says no, like usually you look at that and you go, the worst thing you can get from manager is a one-word answer.
Yeah, that's quite cold.
But actually, just saying no is a great answer to that question.
Answer. Yeah.
So I think I said something along the lines of, I don't know if I can even find it. I think I said something along the lines of Real Madrid and the feel around here at the moment is that there is this fear of the remontada and everything to do with that. Have you sensed any fear in your team kind of in the build up to this game? And maybe I'll try and find the answer while you're answering the next part of the show, but it was a solid like, no, I've not had that. But that created a really good kind of like dynamic that Arsenal aren't, you know, they're not fearful, and they showed that the next day in the Bernabeu when they played them. But it's a funny world like that. I don't know if you've ever been in a space of kind of footballers and stuff yet and done those kind of types of interviews, but it's a weird, it can be quite challenging.
Not really. I did a thing a while ago. I think it was the charity match for Ukraine.
Yeah.
And we were just trying. It was with do you know Connor from FC Newsroom? Connor Hum. He does like
yes.
So he invited me along because he had a press box basically.
Yeah.
And I ended up like asking Mark Strong about like Arsenal, and it was just really. But obviously like. It was just you're in the mix zone. You just get whoever's there.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, so what do you think about Arsenal this season? And obviously Mark Strong's like, I don't know. It's just such a weird like.
Is he an Arsenal fan?
No, I don't know.
All right.
I wasn't sure. It was a really bizarre situation. And I never went out, but it was sort of we were there to like interview Zinchenko, obviously, but then just random people came anyway.
But you sometimes want to grab people,
like, exactly.
Yeah, and just like take opportunities. Like I've interviewed like. It was an opportunity out of nowhere to interview it was then the head, the leader of the opposition in Sir Keir Starmer, and now obviously Prime Minister. And it was just like, it just came out of nowhere, and it ended up having a chat. And I remember going on like the phone with him, and it was a phone call kind of interview. And it was, I think it was 2 years ago? I think it was. It was first he said, hello, are we signing Declan Rice? That was the first thing he said. Now, I'm not going to do a political route because I know that everyone will have their views, but it was just kind of that, you can tell this guy's an Arsenal fan.
Yeah, I love that.
First thing he asks is,
ages in it as well. I know exactly when that was.
Yeah, exactly. I did find the answer to that question. Yeah, I said there's been a lot of talk here in Spain, particularly about the word fear and suggesting that Arsenal are fearful of a Real Madrid comeback. Have you seen anything in your players that suggests you've seen any fear in your team this week? And he says, I wouldn't use that word. I think respect, admiration for what they've done in competition as a club over the years, the history they have, the values that they defend, unbelievable, amazing, and inspiration for any coach, any manager, any team. But after that, it's the competition. It's what we are going to face tomorrow, an opposition that we know very well, and we are determined to go out there and try and win the game. But yeah, just what he said, I wouldn't use that word.
Yeah, it's good. Do you know what he's so good at? I've never done any media training. I don't know, but I suspect one of the things would be like rejecting a framework. So obviously, like someone asks you this player or this player, and he just goes, he won't answer that bit. It's not quite. He will answer the question, but he'll reject the framing of the question. It's so good.
Yeah, he's like, he's not perfect, that's for sure. And there are times, where he's gone kind of like, he's kind of gone off the track of what like the press officer might want him to be saying and to an answering a question. But it's those moments where you see his personality come out, and like there are times where he gets asked about transfers, and you can just see that like you can tell, and it's this is going to sound really stupid because obviously he's the Arsenal manager, but you know that he knows much more than we do, because a question will come in and he'll be sitting there like, it's like, are you for real? Like that's he doesn't say that, but you can see that in his look. Like, is really like you're asking me that? Like, if only I could really give you the detail. And I know fans will be like, well, he should, but he can't. Like, there are reasons why he can't do what we would love him to do and tell us that. And that's why it's ours and others' job to try and get it out of him as best we can. But it's a weird, it's a wacky scenario. How are you feeling about kind of like Andrea Berta in particular, and kind of that, because it's a huge change from Edu, who was like this charismatic front of house, kind of would be happy to say hello to the lads down from AFTV or whatever, to go into Berta, who is, barring a strange video I saw pop on my timeline this week.
Oh yeah,
how weird was that? I think that's a load of rubbish, by the way. But like, this guy's like, I got a picture of Berta. Here's a story about it.
It's true.
You could literally make up whatever you wanted with just a picture of you and Berta. But like, it's interesting, kind of how different I think he is to Edu.
It is, I'm kind of cautious as well, because I don't know if you feel this, but I'm kind of cautious of like this thing I'm sort of sensing, and again, it's difficult to say exactly where it's coming from, but of sort of vilifying Edu. Like any mistake we made pre-2024 was Edu's fault. And everything 2025 is anything good is Andrea Berta. It's like, well, hang on a minute.
Not true. I mean, we built a squad that challenges for titles. That was also Edu. That
was Edu, yeah. So I just want to be cautious of that, because I do feel that creeping in a little bit, because people want, and I get it. People want like a villain, and that makes sense. Some of this is a kind of a pantomime to some people, certainly. But I think, So I personally, what I was looking for a sporting director, I remember making a video about it, is I would love a bit more communication. I don't know if you saw Man City, that every year they put out, Khaldoon puts out like a video of like 25 minutes.
He's done that a couple of times, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Well, certainly
right
more
at the start.
Earlier on, he used to sit down with Vinay in the garden. They were like social distancing and everything.
Yes, and that was when they announced Arteta was becoming manager from head coach.
Yeah, that was it. That was it. That's my taste personally, but I respect that not everyone wants that. And they just want the signings, or whatever, and that's fine. What I like is the proactivity, certainly in what we're seeing come out in terms of the Gabriel contract, the Zubimendi stuff. It's difficult to say how much of that was already pre-agreed, etc. It's still very, very early days. It's hard to say, man. I think what I find interesting about a lot of this, and certainly the stuff off the pitch, so discussing Berta, or I'll see threads sometimes on X or videos on YouTube, and I go, the only way you would be sure of this information is if you were in the room.
Yeah.
They'll be like, Tim Lewis said no. I'm like, how do you know that?
Oh yeah, I saw that tweet. Did you reference in the tweet that went out? I think went a bit viral. There's like someone put a tweet out that was like, all the things that we want from Arsenal this summer, if you see it doesn't happen, this is the guy that stopped it. It's just a picture of Tim Lewis.
Yeah, I think it's just in general. I guess for me, it's just in general conversation. I find it really interesting, like, because it's really hard to analyze those people, which is not to say we shouldn't, because I think you can try and triangulate information and try and get a sense of things, and you hear certain bits of information. But for me to sit here and give loads of like, here's what I think about Tim Lewis, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, but people, I get it. People want to kind of have someone, whether it's a villain or whatever. Yeah, so it's very difficult to say with Berta, and especially with the fact he doesn't particularly communicate and doesn't sort of certainly externally talk yet. I would love that. That's something that I would love, just personally, because I think having someone at the club, who speaks well, who isn't Mikel Arteta, I think is quite useful. And probably for Mikel as well, to not just, because Eddie was quite a useful guy to be like, there was kind of the pairing. Yeah. And so it would be friend. I think at the minute, maybe Berta, I don't know, depends on long term, but I think a lot of it, especially if we don't do anything this season, I think a lot will be riding on Arteta. And it might be nice for him to have someone alongside him saying, this is the vision. You know, we come to conversation about like Šeško or whatever, and I see people kicking off, and I get it. And that's a different conversation. But I feel like sometimes you have to remind people Arsenal will exist beyond next season. Like we will play football in 26-27. So we have to sign players that are going to be all right then as well.
It's all about the now for everyone, like, you know, and winning the title next season. But yeah, it doesn't stop. Like football just doesn't end after next season. It's interesting to see how preseason goes. Preseason usually get a lot of access. I'm gutted I'm not going this year because I've got a wedding. But out in Asia, I'm sure there will be access that they get, that the media will get to, and maybe to Bert. I remember when Edu sat down in, I think the summer that we signed Jesus and Zinchenko, and he sat down and in an interview, he talked quite openly about Rafinha and the links to Rafinha and how Deco had kind of spoken to Deco and stuff, and that was quite interesting. So I'll be intrigued to see if Berta does anything. It might come down to, you know, he's not confident enough with his English to sit down in front of the media and do like a full-on interview, because you know, I've met the guy once. You know, while he did speak English, I don't know, I couldn't tell from that conversation if he could have a full-blown like press conference style sit down. I don't know. So
and it's tricky because, like, in, you know, there's teams obviously who deal with this sort of stuff, but like the example I always give is the Saliba situation. He went out on loans. You must remember this period. Like how many Arsenal fans were like, "What's going on with Saliba?" All they needed to do was have one press conference, whatever it was, and just say, "We really like William. He's just gone out on loan here." Whatever. But they just didn't say anything, and that's the problem is in the gap. People fill it with whatever. So I just think it's always been conscious of that, and I wonder if we don't fill the gap with Berta with certain things, if things start to go wrong, where the sphere goes. I don't know.
Yeah, it's primed for there to be a lot more speculation than there was with Edu, when you can kind of like, the issue with that is though that obviously, and the club will certainly feel it, is that like the more they put out, the more quotes there are, the more people overanalyze those specific quotes. I think about how "Be Excited's" been turned into an absolute meme from Josh Kroenke. Like, you know, it does happen. I think there's that Edu last transfer window when he was speaking about Raheem Sterling and that signing. You know, how I think he said something on the lines of, you know, we didn't plan on this. Like,
to be fair, we didn't plan this.
That got taken. I'm surprised that even went out, because I think it was a club media video. So I'm surprised that clip made it out, to be honest. But like, that then got taken as kind of like something to use. In the end, it actually got used as kind of fact check Thierry Henry a few weeks ago in the end. But I think that with kind of what's public, what goes out, it's all very guarded always. You know, that's the way it is. You know, the Arsenal don't want you know, the bad stories. That's just any club in the world, you know, wants perfect PR. But it's you know, people like myself, you, and others in the space, it's down to us to kind of ask those questions and speak our opinions on it, because if we don't, what's the point? While doing it in a way in which we don't abuse people, which is a skill apparently in 2025 to be able to do that. So it is what it is. Rounding kind of towards the end of this chat, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show again, and I hope we don't leave it as long this time. Remember that chat that we did with George, I think, on your channel, about kind of like youth players or ages ago? How I'd be interested in kind of a retrospective on that whole conversation and see what happened, because I think we're talking about like a Mario Koja-Dubry. I'd like to go to George and be like, "Where's the Mario Koja-Dubry, George? What's he doing?" I'm sure there are things I said that now that are incredibly silly, but like, I think that there's the whole youth side of things is a really different dynamic now with Arsenal. Like, we've just, as of today, got the released list. There's a lot of players on there, of course, that are leaving. A lot of them are young players, of course, as well. But since we last kind of had that chat, just to kind of round off this conversation, Ethan Waneri, Miles Lewis-Skelly, there was quite a few debuts for young players. Ismail Kabia, Maldini. We're giving a go Nathan Butler-Odeji, of course, as well. Some, of course, you know, there's kind of token debuts, if you like. They're not going to go anywhere. Nathan Butler-Odeji is leaving. But others, of course, aren't. And I think there is a clear evidence of a pathway with Ethan and Miles, of course, now in that team. And Max Daumer is the next one that we're all expecting to have a big pre-season and come into the squad. So how do you now view kind of Arteta's view of youngsters and pathways for them, I guess?
Yeah, I think probably, when was it? Probably like November 23. I think I remember making videos and being like, I think I remember I made a video on TDK and was like, looking at the numbers. I remember comparing them to Klopp and Guardiola at the time, and it wasn't particularly good. And I think at the time, basically, I said there's a couple of solutions. Either the players aren't good enough, or there's not enough opportunities. That's there's kind of only really two answers here. Like the players aren't good enough, so we need to recruit better players, or we just aren't giving them enough opportunities. And you could sort of look at certain players and say, well, maybe they were good enough. You could look at certain opportunities and say, well, that was enough. And I remember getting quite annoyed about there was like a PSV game maybe where we qualified.
PSV, where we didn't bring on Raw Waters and I think maybe was it Waneri, I think was the other one on the bench as well.
Yeah. But I think that was, I think to be fair, like it was difficult at the time because we had the hindsight now and we can know that, but it's hard. But to be fair, like they've completely changed my expectations of it and completely changed my feeling around it. I think, with Miles and Ethan, Max coming through, but even though some decent sales like Mika Biereth and stuff like that, like, I don't even going back now, Willock and Smith Rowe and Nketiah and stuff moving on, like Reece Nelson will probably move on for a decent fee. I think those are all success stories of the academy. I think I'm interested to see how it develops because I'm always curious about this like phase 5 thing, like what is it?
Those bloody phases, honestly.
What phase is McKellen?
What phase is Arda slotted?
What phase is slotted?
What phase is Desiree Douay? And someone said to me the other day, I'm like, are you what?
Unfortunately, it is quite a funny meme. So, it
is quite funny.
It takes it. But I wouldn't be surprised if heavy usage of the academy or like, some real involvement there is there. And again, maybe that was kind of the plan all along. I don't know. Maybe we go back to the comms conversation about like, I think there could have been maybe some slightly better comms in terms of from Per Mertesacker explaining what was going to happen and maybe what we can expect, etc. But I mean, ultimately fans aren't owed anything. And I think we got very, very lucky with Miles and Ethan and on some level, but equally have to praise the club. I was lucky enough to have a brief conversation with Miles's mum when she was promoting Number One Fan Club. Mate, what a woman! Like incredible, like
brilliant.
So driven.
I've been to one of her kind of the talks that she does with parents. Is brilliant?
Yeah, she was great, and so just you could see a mile off while Miles is the way he is. So we've got lucky, but also the club have worked at it, and you need a bit of luck. It's not so often a Miles Lewis Skelly or anything when Eric come along, and we've got what I think are basically two at least £80 million talents who've come at the same time, and we might have another one on the way. So credit to the club.
Alex, thank you so much for your time, mate. I really genuinely do appreciate it. You've enjoyed this kind of different conversation, I guess, to what we're usually used to on the Arsenal sphere.
No Šeško Gyökeres.
So what do you? No, I'm not going to go there. One may have already come in by now. This time this goes out, so who knows? I know the chat was going to be going.
Isak, you watch.
Yeah, imagine. Tell people they can find you, mate, and what you're going to be up to in the next. Think about a week into the future.
Yeah, goodness. Well, you can find me on Different Knock on the YouTubes and on the Cannon podcast with George and Rohan and various other people on there. And you can also find me on X at AM on Football.
There you go. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, especially because this is obviously not the usual that you've been used to. There's a couple more, I think, probably pre-recorded episodes coming your way at points. If anything big does go down, of course, I'll be around to drop something, I'm sure, to talk about it, discuss it, get my thoughts, and give you a platform, of course, to leave your comments in as well about whatever's happened. Hopefully, something good. Fingers crossed. I'm not going to say what, because I have no idea at this stage. It could be anything. Well, who knows? So the transfer window will take us. I'm sure Liverpool have signed another 5 players by now, though, that's for sure. Thank you for listening, people. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy, respectful. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and the Different Knock, of course. And as always, up the Arsenal.